Well, stop dreaming about making $1 million. Start by making 100. That's the advice coming in from Netflix's How to Get Rich star Ramit Sethi. Hear out as he shares his advice on making money.
First, I focused on getting a good job and increasing my income. Second, I invested every single month automatically and just let that money grow. And then third, I started a business. And that helped to increase my income and increase the reach of my message. So exactly what I talk about in terms of building a rich life. You don't have to win the lottery. You don't have to wait for somebody to give you money. There are slow, methodical ways that you can build a rich life.
That is super interesting. Now, Ramit, there's the perennial debate for people who want to invest their money. Do you look at maybe investing your money in mutual funds, just the safe route, or do you invest in, say, 4 to 5 large mid-cap stocks and then close your eyes and not worry about it? Which route would you advise?
Well, we all have time for our money. It's one of the most important things in our lives. If you think about it, you ask people, what is important to you? They will say relationships. They will say having a stable place to live, maybe having some fun, traveling perhaps. For all of those things, money is important. So you don't have to spend a lot of time investing. I spend less than 1 hour per month. I set up an automatic investing plan, and I'm not picking stocks. I don't recommend anyone pick individual stocks because you're going to underperform the market over the long term. I recommend you set up a simple, diversified portfolio, set it up automatically, and then move on with your life.
In India, then, Ramit, give us the sense as to what the outlook is when it comes to the 3 tips that you would advise for investing for beginners.
Well, I'll speak to the American market, and there are many ways to adapt my advice for the Indian market. The first thing is to remember that just because people are talking about it in the news does not mean that is how you should invest. When you look at how people talk about investing, it's picking stocks, it's trading. That's not how real long-term investing works. It is simple, quiet, and boring. It's as boring as watching paint on the wall dry. Now, what we do in the US market, we focus on a diversified portfolio, same thing as any country should do. And there are a variety of products over here, things like a target date fund. Those funds are automatically diversified. And as you get older, they become more conservative. Those are fantastic investments. That's when my family asks me, how should I get started? That is what I recommend for them.
Now, here's a very common question and something that you've dealt with on the show as well. Married couples who have joint accounts. What exactly is your outlook? Do you think that there's a thumb rule, just have separate accounts? What exactly is the advice when it comes to joint finances?
Okay, I speak to a lot of couples. I bring them on my Netflix show. I bring them on my podcast. And you'll be shocked. People will go 40 years and never really have a series of honest conversations about money. When it comes to accounts, the simplest advice I can give would be to have a joint account, and then each person in a relationship has their own individual account. And so the joint account pays for all the joint expenses. The individual accounts are no questions asked. If you want to use it for a hobby, feel free to use it for that. No questions asked. But I'll share one surprising thing I've learned from speaking to tens of thousands of couples. Some couples keep their money separate. Some couples bring it together entirely. It actually does not predict the success or failure of a relationship. What is much more predictive is that a couple actually talks about money regularly. That is important. If you talk about it and choose to keep your money separate, fine. I personally recommend putting it together, at least somewhat, but you've got to have a series of conversations about money.
Now, the age-old question, buying versus renting, and I know that you don't believe in going by the age-old advice of, buying a house for that safety and security, and you've said never feel bad for renting. Why is that?
Of course, there's a lot of cultural values about owning and passing down real estate. I understand. I have family in India. I visit frequently. In the United States, we also have this belief that you've got to own a house and that if you rent, you are throwing money away. And this is just totally wrong. I have lived in San Francisco, New York, Los Angeles, big cities. And when I calculated how much it would cost to own versus rent, I actually made more money renting and investing the difference. Now, most people never calculate this. This is the biggest purchase of our lives, and they just buy it because somebody, some distant relative told them, you've got to buy real estate. That is not how you make sound financial decisions. You've got to calculate, does it make sense for me to rent or should I buy? In my case, I made more money renting and investing the difference because it is so expensive to own in certain cities in the US.
Now, weddings in India, it's a huge deal. You know, they say sell your family gold, but make sure that the wedding is absolutely top notch and no expense is spared. But this can be very dangerous, overspending on, you know, one big event. So what's the advice that you have for a lot of people like this?
Well, obviously, we shouldn't spend beyond our means. That's obvious. I do not want people going into debt for their wedding, but I also understand the cultural desires for a big, beautiful wedding. I had those same desires, and I knew early on in life that even before I met my wife, I knew one day I wanted to have a big, beautiful wedding. And so I started putting money aside, even as a single man, knowing that one day I was going to have this beautiful wedding. And so if you can start saving early, even a little bit per month, fantastic. In my book, in chapter 9, I show exactly how much you should be saving, even as a 20-year-old. And people's eyes go wide when they realize how much these weddings cost. I will say another thing. If it is important to you, there's no shame in spending money on something if you can afford it. In Indian values, we have a lot of importance placed on a wedding. Okay, if you can afford it and you can spend money on it, I say fantastic. On the other hand, you definitely do not want to go into debt for a wedding.
You know, there's a very emotional connect as well to money, two very different mindsets of people. The savers, you know, the frugal ones who are economical, and the spenders, you know, get that paycheck, take that vacation. What do you have to say about having that right mindset when it comes to the emotional connect with money?
Money is very emotional. Money is very psychological, and often we deny it. We think that money is a number on a spreadsheet, and we even tell ourselves, I need to be less emotional about money. But money is emotional. If you look at the foods in your kitchen, I would not be surprised if those are the same foods that you grew up eating. If you look at the clothes you wear, I would not be surprised if they're the same clothes as your coworkers. So we have to acknowledge that money is fundamentally emotional. And therefore, we have to say, I want to master my money psychology and my money emotions. There are some couples where one person calls themselves a spender, the other is a saver. My philosophy on money is you should spend extravagantly on the things you love, but cut costs mercilessly on the things you don't. For example, I happen to love travel. My wife and I spend a lot of money on travel. On the other hand, a car is not that important to me, so I drive a very old car. The more that you become clear about what your rich life is, it can be as specific as the type of food that you order or buy from the store, and it can be as big as a beautiful wedding. That is when you start to define and design your rich life.
Got it. And Ramit, it would be interesting to understand as well, that association of guilt that's with money. When you spend too much, am I spending too much? Do I need to be on a budget? How does one, disassociate from that feeling of guilt when it comes to spending money? Or what is it? What are the items that you need to look at without guilt, and those that, you need to feel a little bit guilty about when you've spent that money?
I don't believe in budgets, first of all. I think that most of us are told by somebody to keep a budget. Even the person telling you to keep a budget doesn't even keep a budget. I know a lot of the people who wrote the books on keeping budget. They don't keep a budget. Let's reframe the way we think about money. So many of us feel guilty about money. We feel bad about money. And yet, when we see something in front of us, we go and spend on it. I would rather we just get honest and say, you know what? I love being able to eat out with my friends. I love being able to buy this type of shirt. Okay, great. Let me make a plan. So I recommend knowing 4 numbers. And I'll share these numbers for the US market. You can adapt as necessary. Instead of tracking the price of every last thing you buy at the store, 4 numbers. The first, fixed costs. For us, 50 to 60% of take-home pay goes to fixed costs, which includes your rent or mortgage, any car payment, debt payment, groceries, all that. The second, savings, 5 to 10% of take-home. Third is investments, 5 to 10% of take-home, although, of course, I'd love to see that higher. And the fourth is my favorite. It's called guilt-free spending, 20 to 35% of take-home pay. That's after taxes. So imagine knowing you can easily afford 20 to 35% on guilt-free spending. It's up to you what you want to buy. A beautiful shirt, dinner's out, whatever it may be, and you can do it guilt-free. You can do it guilt-free because you know that the rest of your money is being automatically saved and invested.